Well, welcome everyone to the Business in Calgary podcast. I'm your host, Oliver Basner, and my co-host is here with us today, Tia Calloway. And we're pretty excited to be interviewing Mike Broadfoot. And so let me give you a little bit of background about Mike. He's been in energy, business-to-business software, medical, financial services, property development, probably a little property management in there as well with a couple of buildings. And so recently he was inducted into the Alberta Business Hall of Fame. So that's a wonderful honor, Mike, and congratulations.
Yes,
so we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Yes, it was a nice day for me. Some friends held a lunch, and there was the dinner. I think 200 and some odd people that had been on teams with me came, and for me, I think the highlight was just seeing that even over 3 decades, the chemistry that is between those people is just special, and that just lights me up. That was what was so great about the day.
Did you know the award was coming, or was it kind of a surprise?
They let you know in the spring.
Okay.
They want to make sure that you're okay with accepting it, and then away you go.
Excellent.
That's great.
Now, what are you up to these days? I mean, obviously you've done a lot of different things, a lot of different industries, which we'll get into later. But what are you doing these days?
I split my time about 50-50 with the not-for-profit sector and still some for-profit businesses. So a small handful of tech companies that I'm involved in, just at the board or as an investor. A property development company that we started a number of years ago to be part of the urbanization, I guess, of Calgary. So we build apartment buildings down in close to the core. Our target market is people who don't have cars. So that's been a new, interesting journey to learn. And then on the not-for-profit side, I've had the opportunity to be involved with STARS as a board member, and that everybody knows would be a really wonderful organization to support. Mm-hmm. There's another sort of sometimes coined as Calgary's best secret. There's a company called COST, which is a not-for-profit engineering firm that's focused on clean water and hygiene and sanitation in the developing world. And so I've been involved with that for about 20 years, on the board for the last 5 or 6. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is the Haskayne School of Business has a program, Creative Destruction Labs, or CDL, and then a component of that is Scale Up, and we focus on companies that are no longer just a basic idea, but ones that need to get some coaching on scaling up. So there's a set of mentors. Companies come in for 1 year, and we hopefully support them on a playbook, if you like, or playbooks on how they're going to scale their company.
So it sounds like you're keeping busy.
Yeah, I'm just kind of busy by nature and curious by nature, so I'll just continue on.
Perfect.
Awesome. So the September issue of Business in Calgary, you guys are on the cover. Anyone that was inducted into the Business Hall of Fame that in November, I guess. And I was reading in the article that you attributed a lot of your success, a large part of it, to your involvement in teams, team sports, teams over the years. And I just want to know, what do you think the experience of being a part of those teams really taught you that you were able to carry forward into your career?
Yeah, I think, as you know, humans are really wired to be on teams. That's how we've progressed through history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, being on teams is kind of a core to getting along with people and just, I guess, achieving whatever you want. What was really fortunate for me is I ended up in some situations with a set of coaches and a father who I think really understood team building. Probably back then, not so much in books, but intuitively. Mm-hmm. And I got to be an observer. And for a number of years, it was like being in a petri dish of how a team gets built, how people get bonded.
Right.
And it just became intuitive for me.
Yeah.
I've led teams, been on teams, led teams in my career as well, and I know one of the secrets is to surrounding you with those great people. You've got to be surrounded by excellent people on that team. And have you found any sort of secrets or tips that our listeners could benefit from on how you do that? How do you get the right people on that team?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that you can think about that might be different. One is, if you're going to be a leader of teams in organizations, you have to have your eye out, your radar out for talent all the time. And so you're meeting people in a variety of things, not just when you're recruiting for a job, and you're building up a catalog in your mind of different people with different attribute sets, and they might not come to work with you for a year or 2 years or 3 years, but you have this plethora of people that in your mind have a set of skills. And then I would say, secondly, I came from elite sports, which is an absolute meritocracy.
Yeah.
And business organizations can't run, they can run as a meritocracy, but not probably the same as a professional sports team, if you like. But at the same time, you have to drive, I believe, meritocracy into your team, and you have to do what's best for the team. And sometimes that means some of the players aren't suited anymore for the roles that they were in.
Right.
Right.
And in the cultures that I've been involved in, we've tried to have it such that when someone doesn't fit in a role, they don't go out the door.
Yeah.
You know enough about them. They were generally hired because they had some skills. And how do you have them slotted into the right place in the team continually? Which means that as companies grow, lots of times people can't grow with the role. As much support as you gave them, they might reach their limits in terms of what they can do. Hopefully you're just not pushing them out the door, and you're keeping them in doing something that they're really good at. And then you end up with this loyalty, and you end up with long-term teammates. But back to the meritocracy point, so I can bring this to full circle.
Yep.
Occasionally you have to actually let people go.
Yeah.
Because the team deserves somebody who's more interested, more motivated, more committed, or has better skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even maybe more passionate.
Yes, you're absolutely right. More passionate. That's what I meant by motivated.
Yeah, for sure. Great, thank you for that. One of the things I read is that one of the things that your parents passed on to you was put more into anything than you feel you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and how that served you.
Yeah, it's just something that my parents said to me, particularly again my father, and he said it to the three kids. And my brother and I actually talked about this not that long ago. And at the time, it just sounds like do your best. But as I got older, I saw there's more psychology in this than just do your best. When you think of how people react to each other, everybody's often gauging, how much did I do? Did I get recognized? And the whole psychology of how people work well together is go in with an expectation you're going to give more than you expect to get out.
Right.
And I think then things work out. You get lots out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the giving mentality. And it
it
applies in so many aspects, and I think people forget to apply it to their work, their career, and they think of it more in that giving, volunteering way, or to, mentoring, but not to every aspect. So I love that.
That's right. Too many relationships are kind of transactional, right? Where everybody keeps measuring.
Yeah.
And if you go in with the mindset you're going to give more than you're thinking you're going to get out, you do well.
And people notice.
And people notice for sure. If you're a person who's giving a lot, they notice. That's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even about, when I think about my own career, I've often progressed in my career. My career was slightly different. Yours was more corporate, but I progressed because I always gave 100% or 120%, and people noticed.
Yeah.
And then they tap me on the shoulder sometimes. They say, hey, are you interested in this, or do you want to move into this? So.
I can empathize. I started in the same role. I ended up, in the senior leadership team of one of Canada's bigger companies early in my career, which was a lot about what you're talking about.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's a great tip for our listeners as well, right?
Yeah.
Is give more than you expect to get back.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing I really liked in your article that you mentioned was that you had some advice for younger people, and you said there was two themes really. One of them was to be really courageous and thirsty for learning.
Yes.
And then the other one was to stand back, think about what the impact on the broader purpose of the organization or department is to the actions that you're taking, and pick something that will have impact in those, and then put energy into it outside of your job.
For sure. That is advice I've been giving to young people for a long, long time. And for some, it seems very easy to absorb. For others, they get a little bit stuck on the second point of how do I pick something that will impact everybody, and how am I going to go and do that on my own? And so I'm not saying it's easy, but it is for sure doable. And I'll give an example. Early in my career, it was at Gulf Canada, and we made decisions on capital budgeting a certain way.
Yep.
And I said, well, spreadsheets or things like Microsoft Excel were just launched. And I'm a young guy, I know how to use it.
Yep.
And I built a framework to give more objectivity to their decision-making criteria that all sat in a spreadsheet, which today, when I say that out loud, that sounds so simple.
Back then it was revolutionary.
Around 1980, that were the people making the decisions, they'd never even been on a computer.
Right.
My point is that when I brought that forward, the people a few levels up went, wow. And we started using it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I remember, when you talk about the 80s, I remember teaching myself, because we're similar in age, and I remember teaching myself VisiCalc, which was before, Excel and all the other spreadsheets we have today, and people look at me like, why are you even doing that? Because it's kind of fun, and I can do some really cool, stuff with it, right? So, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So look for those if you're early in your career and you wanna make a mark.
Yeah.
So having been through several industries changes throughout your career, what advice would you have for somebody who is, moving through their career and starting to wonder what's next for them? Someone who's not at the beginning anymore.
Someone who's not at the beginning anymore. That's a good question. I think be strategic about what industry you're in. So you're talking about a person who's looking to open a new chapter, who's not just starting their career.
Yeah.
I think you have to be strategic about what industry you work in to make sure that you're passionate about it once you're of an age where you've come to know yourself and come to know enough about the world. And secondly, pick something if you really want to progress or get more responsibility where the industry's expanding versus contracting. An expanding industry means more jobs, means more people coming in, means expanding organizations, which definitely means more opportunity.
More opportunity, absolutely. Yeah,
And I
completely
think
agree.
that's good advice, because I think that when you look at somebody who's been through a good chunk of their career, they're probably not looking at relearning a set of skills to maybe get into an industry that's expanding, right? They're looking to maybe coast and I don't think that, like, to your point, that's really going to do them any good.
Yeah, they might have to learn some new skills or just how to adapt their current set of skills.
One of the things that you were quoted as saying was entrepreneurs have to have kind of a good mix of confidence and a fear of failure. I love that. Tell us about that.
Well, I think confidence is what gives you the energy to go forward, and the confidence that you could do something, start something new, take on some risk. That gets you going. But I think sometimes it's the fear of failure that causes you to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and not give up. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, because the going can be tough as an entrepreneur.
Sure. And for me, that fear of failure that I have felt is if you're out there starting something new and you're leading others and others have bought into the story that we're all going to achieve, I feel a heck of a lot of pressure that it doesn't fail, because that can translate to failure for other people.
Yes.
Right.
If it's their incomes, etc. If you've borrowed money, if you've taken investors in equity, that fear of failure for me is for sure something I've really felt and helped me dig deep.
Dig deep and keep going too, I'm guessing.
Yep, keep going. That's right.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we always ask during this podcast is what's something that you wish someone would have told you when you started the journey? Maybe we can prevent somebody else from having to go through the school of hard knocks on something.
And you have the benefit of looking back on this now. Hindsight is 2020.
For sure. I think what I'd say is a career is a really long journey. As you're looking at different alternatives all the time, you need to pay attention to what might be one-way doors versus two-way doors. And by one-way doors, I mean you've made that move and there is no going back. So you're kind of assessing what risk you're taking on and what steps you're taking that are going to commit you for some period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I'd say is that generally relationship trumps outcome. Not always, but you are going to be faced continually with challenges, and you're going to have to assess how to deal with them. And just remember that relationship generally out trumps outcome, because relationships are what drive the world. They drive trust. And if you choose shortcomings where you want the outcome of challenge A to be your way, this has to go this way, well, make sure that you are not destroying relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. And I would say, secondly, go out of your way to develop relationships across your whole organization, not just with people who might affect you directly in the short term or the long term. Really get to understand all the people around you and how they interact, etc. And I think it took me a while to figure that out.
And what were some of the things that you did to build those relationships, especially in the early days, right? Because I completely agree. Relationships are so critical in business. Without other people, you're not getting there. And what were some of the things you did to sort of forge those networks, forge those relationships, and get people on board?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I'm just pausing whether I speak to that as a leader. I'll speak to it as a leader. Okay. As a leader, a lot about making a team work well is much more about the bonds that go sideways between people and all different directions. And a key way to have people bond is to get them to know each other. So build in, I'll call them patterns or traditions, that people do things together that aren't necessarily right on the problem set they're solving at work. It could be some kind of act of learning that they do together. It could be that every second month we are doing a bunch of social things together.
Yes.
Because the more people get to know each other, the better they communicate. You guys know this. The tighter they bond, so the further they'll walk to help another person.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know if that kind of answers your question. I mean, I took it from a leader perspective versus if I was just starting in my job.
Well, and I think bringing it back to what we talked about at the start, that experience being a part of a team growing up, you really learn that those bonds that you create, those relationships you create, are the things that hold you through those hard times.
Oh, for sure.
When things get hard, having that relationship established, it carries you through.
It does, and it makes your communication so much more efficient. Just think when you don't know somebody well, how careful you are to try and say something. You can talk around things a lot more when two people don't know each other really well. When they know each other really well, usually they can get right to the heart of what needs to be said.
And get that honest feedback and that honest answer to their question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And navigate through the weeds a lot faster, Right?
Yeah,
So even if there is
exactly.
miscommunication,
Yes,
you work through it a lot faster.
that's right.
Because you know the other person. And
Yeah,
so
you
you
iterate.
have that trust built and that relationship built that you can just say, okay, yeah, that was a one-off. You
Yep,
know, that was a mistake. I believe that.
yep,
You know, and move through it faster.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Now it can be lonely at the top. So I'm guessing, everything we've just talked about relationships and people and being able to have those connections probably helps with that. Would you agree with that?
100%. That's how I was going to answer your question as you led into it. I thought you were going to ask me what's it like being lonely at the top, and you gave the answer. The answer is it's not as lonely at the top if you develop these really trusted bonds with those around you, and you can treat people more like partners, and not take it all on your shoulders that people are what you say is gospel, if you like. So I think you nailed it. That relationships make it less lonely for sure. And if you have the right relationship at the top, you don't have to feel you're alone even in the decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about mistakes, because you don't get it perfect all the time, and
No.
so how do you? We've all got that little voice in our head that beats
Yep.
us up, probably more so than anybody around us is going to beat us up. How do you deal with that when you have a failure, and how do you keep pushing forward and moving forward? Like, what's
Well,
kept you going over the years?
Yeah, I think because failure is mostly about learning. I don't quit easy, so there's been a few times when I should have recognized the failure earlier, and I'm trying to always keep that in my mind now. But I've certainly had failures where I've sort of misjudged how a market or an industry actually works, and we got so far into it, and then, wow, we are not going to change gravity here. We are not going to change how this industry operates and be successful, and then having to back away from that. I think on the people side, you need to be really quick, and really quick's not the right word. You need to be really forthright and purposeful about whether or not you've made a mistake in terms of a role somebody's in or in a hire. And I've been in quite a few situations where we put somebody in a role where they didn't succeed. And you need to pretty quickly I think, work through that and try and turn it from being a mistake, which it was,
Right.
to just a learning.
Yeah.
So how do you turn mistakes into learning, I guess is.
So you don't repeat the same mistake.
So you don't make the same mistake, and so if you're early enough, you can course correct.
Right.
Either course correct on the person's career or course correct on getting the team working better.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? Have you ever found in life, if you don't learn from the mistake the first time, there's an opportunity to repeat it? I always joke about that.
That's for sure. That is for sure. Yeah.
It'll just come back to haunt us again, right? So may as well learn the lesson the first time around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that, because I know it can be so hard when you make that mistake, or you've invested so much time or money into something, you fail, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, and then you're beating yourself up, right? And I like what you said, which is, look at it as a learning moment. What did I learn from this? How can I move forward beyond this mistake?
Yep.
And I think too, when you take that approach of looking at it as this was a learning experience, you're not hesitant to act in what the best action is for both you and the other people involved, because you're trying to learn from it. You're trying to do better. And I think that sometimes when we think there's a failure or a mistake that we've made, sometimes we kind of let our ego get a hold of us, and then we try and backpedal, and we make it last longer than it should have. And then that's when we end up hurting our relationships, and those choices hurt other people.
Well said.
So I like that, the learning.
How important is curiosity?
Well, I'm biased on that because I'm a really curious person. I just interested to learn the why. So I'm biased to thinking it's very important. But I guess it depends what your goal is. But if your goal is to be successful in business, then I think curiosity is a really core element of success,
Yes.
because you have to be interested in how can things be done differently, how can they be done better, and you also have to be interested in the why. Why is that person behaving like this? Why do things have that kind of economic model attached to them, and then parse them apart to understand the why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that comment you made about why is that person behaving like this? Because sometimes it has nothing to do with the job. They could be going through something terrible at home. Or personally.
100%. That's right. Understanding why people are exhibiting certain behaviors or saying certain things it's really a secret sauce for people who can develop that emotional intelligence, let's call it.
Right.
I think that's the term that's most often used to understand the why of a person.
Well, and I think we also learn emotional intelligence through those failures we talked about. We
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
much more, we get smarter the second time, third time around.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, on that note, we know that professional development and personal development, it's one and the same. You know, every skill you learn, you apply in all scenarios of life. What has been your favorite self-development book or tool that's really had impact on you?
Yeah, and I'll say this is kind of an advocacy for everybody out there. I think the tool sets that are out there now on learning about yourself and others, Myers-Briggs or DISC or other ones built on emotional intelligence work, those are fantastic tools at learning about yourself. Generally, they're self-validating.
Yeah.
And then they help you learn how to communicate with others. So I highly recommend that. And then I think, there's so many books out there now, and many of them have very common themes, just a different author's view on how to say something. So just pick some authors that you like how they say it, and look at that. For me, a book that I often recommend to younger people, there's a guy, Clayton Christensen, who people know as one of the big academic thought leaders of my generation for sure, Harvard business professor. But looking beyond what he's achieved in terms of his research and understanding how business and how businesses work and how marketing works in particular, he wrote a book called How to Measure Your Life. And I recommend this to young people because what he saw after many years of teaching at Harvard Business School, where you're getting kind of the cream of the crop that goes on to be super successful, he was saying a lot of these people, they're not actually happy.
Right.
And so he convinced Harvard that they would put in a course that he would teach that would be more about softer things in life. And out of this came How to Measure Your Life. And it was about things that are much more important than how big your bank account is and the trepidations that he's observed of people being obsessed with status, with where they are in the hierarchy. I guess that is status. And you should really measure your life on much more fundamental things in terms of your achievements for humanity, I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
fantastic.
Young people, ambitious, that's a book I try and turn them to.
Oh, great
I like that.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I often talk about here at Sonic Coaching is when we're working with clients is there's no point you being super successful if you lose everything else in your life, right? If at the end of your life all you did was made a lot of money, nothing wrong with that, but you have no family, you have no health, you've lost your health and everything else that's important to us as we move forward in life. And assessments, you mentioned DISC and Myers-Briggs. Tia as a partner here actually heads up our whole assessment division.
Yeah.
And I often joke with our clients, after she's done an assessment on you, she knows more about you than your mother. So, but yeah, it's just a great way to improve communication with people. And
I think
understanding.
talking about that curiosity piece that you mentioned, those are really great tools to pique that curiosity on that self-reflection.
Yes.
And say, hey, is that me?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with the rest of what this says, and then there's this statement, and do I do that? And am I just not willing to acknowledge it? Do other people see me that way? And I think that it just encourages that curiosity about that yourself and that development and how you interact with other people, and kind of where your opportunities could lie.
Yeah, and I believe those things should be pervasive across a whole organization, not just for senior management teams.
Yeah.
And rarely have I seen an employee or a team member go through something like that and not have a lot of self-validation on the positive side.
Absolutely.
Where they go, hey, that's why I'm really good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we really appreciate you coming in,
Yeah,
Mike.
thank you so much,
We know
Mike.
how busy you are, and so we're grateful that you took the time to come speak with us. And to our listeners, we'll have another great interview for you coming up off the cover of Business in Calgary magazine. So thanks again, Mike. Thanks for coming down.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.